Okay, we have introduction of pranayama. We'll focus mainly on the text in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, but because many of the things in the handout have already been explained, but there are some things about the handout. You see in the first paragraph the explanation of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the meaning of Hatha Yoga Pradipika. In many modern yoga schools, Hatha Yoga is thought to be the physical exercises without flow. They call it Hatha Yoga or Yin Yoga or Healing Yoga. That is close to genuine traditional yoga, asana practice. But Hatha Yoga is not that. Because Hatha Yoga has the whole practical framework. Chapter 1 is the introduction of yoga, the foundation, asana, yama, niyama. Chapter 2 is pranayama, energy control. Chapter 3 is mudra, which is energy control on a higher level, more powerful. And chapter 4 is about meditation and eventually samadhi. That's the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So Hatha Yoga is not just exercise, as most studios presented. The meaning of Hatha is sun, moon. And try to connect the dots here. This book gives insight into the sun and the moon. Pranayama, the way that we do it, is quite rare in this world. Because most teachers that teach pranayama teach it as breathing exercises. What I'm going to try to make clear, what I'm going to try to explain, I'm going to present you many elements, many aspects that if you think rationally and logically, make clear that pranayama is not breathing exercise. One of them is the name of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Sun, moon. Which sun and moon? Well, if you study a little bit deeper in yoga and you come across the subtle anatomy, you learn that there is a sun gate and a moon gate, which are also called the cosmic nostrils. And this is already where it goes wrong, nostrils. Because nostrils are in your nose. But cosmic nostrils, the sun and the moon, are not in your face. If you study yoga, you learn that the sun is in the bottom of your body, at the bottom of your spine, and the moon is approximately 15 centimeters above your head. And they are called sun gate and moon gate, or nostrils, because that is where Shiva energy enters from the top through the moon gate. Shakti energy goes out through the top, through the moon gate. Well, Shakti energy rises up in the bottom through the sun gate, and it allows the exit of Shiva energy through the bottom, through the sun gate. How is it possible that the majority of yoga practitioners, teachers, authorities in yoga present pranayama as breath control? That is because regardless of their status or their academic levels of study in yoga, we are all doubting Thomases. I've referred to the doubting Thomas before because we are all guilty of being doubting Thomases. It takes time. And in case of yoga, it takes proper initiation to understand what you're dealing with. Proper initiation means that you're being properly introduced to what pranayama really is. Then, because it's hard to grasp, we are skeptical. Breathing is easy to understand. It's a function of the body. You can do it physically. So everybody understands that. Why should I keep myself busy with something so vague and mysterious? And I mean, who can taste or touch or see or hear energy? So that is why we had such a very careful step-by-step build-up from the start of this course to end up here. The name of this book already should make any practitioner in yoga who does pranayama as breath control, should make them think. What does that mean, that sun and that moon? How is that related? You know that already, lesson 12, we talked about energy. And I've been talking about energy since the beginning of the course. I even dedicated an extra, in the second Saturday, lesson 3, we had an extra subject to introduce the concept of energy, because it is so important. That is one of the things. Hatha Yoga Pradipika is Pradipika means shedding light on. Many books. The book from Iyengar is in Sanskrit is called Yoga Dipika. Dipika means shedding light on. And many books in India are called blah 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 Dipika or Pradipika. Shedding light on the balance between sun and moon. Not the cosmic sun and moon in the sky, but the sun and moon within our system, energy system, the sun and the moon, the one at the bottom and the other at the top of our subtle anatomy. So I hope with all these little things of information that I throw at you, that you can see the coherence, that you see the logic that most people fail to see just because they don't have the insight. They don't know the details. If you look at most presentations of yoga, everything stands on its own and nothing is really connected. Yoga is a powerful system only when the things are part of one whole and are connected. And the way that we present it here, the way that you learn yoga here in the traditional way, everything is part of a whole, and you're very systematically, step by step, being introduced to it, and it's all connected. You see this in the concept of the Kriya exercises. If you do them literally, according to the text, they don't make sense, because there is no coherence. They're not even related to pranayama in that way. Because pranayama, if you interpret it as breath control, swallowing a piece of cloth, how is that going to prepare me for breath control? And even when you talk about pranayama as energy control, how is swallowing a piece of cloth going to prepare me for energy control? It doesn't. But the way that we did it, and the connecting the 7 Kriya exercises leading towards what we are going to do today, it all starts making sense. So many of the things that you then find after the introduction explaining Hatha Yoga Pradipika and its meaning, we have already discussed, or we will discuss when we read chapter 1 and 2. So what we do is we go to the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, chapter 1, Sutra 1. So you have, this is lesson 19, we're almost halfway in the course. We've laid a foundation with Yama Niyama, which is all described in chapter 1. we have done, we started practicing asana in a very particular way. It has led to certain developments. It has changed our condition physically and also mentally. And so the Hatha Yoga Pradipika then comes with chapter 2 saying, chapter 2, Sutra 1, the yogin, having perfected themselves in the asanas, should practice pranayama according to the instructions of their guru, with your senses under control, conforming to a beneficial and moderate diet. Now, practical thing. Dutch grammar has been applied in the English text and it doesn't make sense. You see that in the word asanas. The spelling of the word asanas is asana apostrophe s. In English that is possessive. It doesn't make sense. In Dutch, however, it's plural. When a word ends with a consonant and then followed by an s, it ends with apostrophe s. So you have Dutch grammar applied in English and it looks a little bit weird. So now you understand when you come across, because it will happen many times when we read this text.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, yes.
Why didn't you choose a book that goes from original language to English? Going through Dutch first.
The Dutch book? That's why we have the English translation.
But there are direct English translations without going through Dutch.
No, wait, but no Hatha Yoga Pradipika interpretation is the same. This one, it was written by Ajita, my yoga teacher.
Okay.
If you compare this with other Hatha Yoga Pradipikas, it's totally different. Because the explanation in other books don't make sense.
Okay.
This is our approach.
Okay.
And here it all starts making sense. So Ajita wrote that book. The thick, the bold characters, that is the original text. What follows is Ajita's interpretation. And one of Ajita's students at some point has then translated the whole text. So we have it in English. So, according to the instructions of your guru is one important sentence. You will find this with every technique being introduced. Why? Because you can't learn yoga from a book. That is one thing. You need a teacher to explain the nuances, what is behind the symbolical language. And not only that, according to the instructions of your guru, there are many yoga teachers with certificates, with diplomas, who have never been properly introduced to yoga, initiated into yoga. Initiation means that you know the ins and outs, that you are being made aware of the secrets of the meaning behind the symbolical language. Many people are not. Many yoga teachers have not been initiated into yoga. Ajita has been initiated into yoga by mentors, by Indian mentors. Dr. Sharma, Dr. Hari Upajay, several people have given Ajita very deep insight into what yoga really is about, and we are passing that on. There are so many yoga courses these days, and they're all done by people who themselves are not properly initiated into yoga. That is why there is so much confusion about what yoga really is about. And real yoga these days is very rare. It's very difficult to find because of that. You will see this phrase in every time when there is an introduction of a new exercise. It has to be in accordance to the instruction of your guru or your teacher or a siddhi, a siddha. With your senses under control means that you have learned to use the mind, that you have learned to concentrate and control the mind. The senses under control means that you're not so restless anymore and distracted anymore. So we have laid the foundation for that. Of course, it's not perfect, but we are on our way. With the senses under control, conforming to a beneficial and moderate diet. Beneficial moderate diet is a diet that is nutritious, simply. If you eat too much, it makes you tired. If you eat processed food, it also absorbs a lot of valuable energy. If we change our diets a little bit, eat a little purer food, and try to have light meals most of the time, we simply have more energy we can then use for our yoga endeavors. Because everything is energy. Our development is based on the energy that we have available. If you spend energy on many other aspects of life, conflicts, eating not so nutritious foods that put a burden on the body rather than nurturing it, then spiritual development simply will be more difficult to achieve. Sutra 2. When the energy wanders, the mind is unsteady. But when the energy is still, so is the mind still. And the yogin obtains the power of stillness. Therefore, the energy should be restrained. Notice that this text is not talking about breath. It's talking about energy. When the energy wanders, the mind is unsteady, restless. That is, energy wandering is being distracted by all kinds of things, by desires, by other people's activities, by past experiences, by worries about the future, etc., etc. The mind wandering leads to an unsteady mind. Energy wandering leads to an unsteady mind. But when the energy is still, which is what we are trying to achieve with the practice of yoga, it already happens when we do asana properly, standing still through concentration, actively engaging without movement. When the energy is still, the mind also becomes still. That is why many people like or love yoga, because they feel so much calmer as a result. And thus, the energy should be restrained. And thus, we need to introduce pranayama here so that we can bring what we have achieved until now with chapter 1, the introduction of yama, niyama, and asana. We can bring it to a higher level with the introduction of pranayama. Sutra 3. Life is said to exist only so long as there is energy in the body. Its departure is death. So one should restrain the energy. Now Ajita made an error here in his interpretation, because he is very enlightened and very skillful at finding the meaning behind symbolical texts, but here, in some of the sutras, he takes the text literal. And that he did here too, and he is interpreting this as talking about real life, physical life. This is about energy. And what this means is, life exists only so long as there is energy in the body. Life, that is the crown chakra, spiritual, the spirit, exists only as long as there is vital energy, prana, in the body. The absence of it, its departure, is death. Death is not physical death here, it is tamas condition. Condition that you find most people in. Most people lack spirit. That is why so many faces that you come across when you take the bus or the subway or walk in a busy street, that so many faces are so dark and lacking sparkle and enthusiasm and happiness. This is about energy. This is about the crown chakra not being able to function if there is no vital energy present. Death is not physical death, it's tamas, a condition in which the crown chakra simply is not functioning. And again, so you should restrain the energy using pranayama. Sutra 4, when the nadis are full of impurities, the energy does not go into the middle, Shushumna nadi. How can there be unmani avashta? How can there be attainment of the goal? When we are restless and distracted, Shushumna nadi, the phenomenon of the third channel Shushumna nadi, does not manifest. You still remember Shushumna nadi, you have Ida, Pingala, Ida responsible for Shiva energy, Pingala responsible for Shakti energy. If those are relatively balanced, then Shushumna nadi comes into being, allowing energy to rise up, leading to the functioning of the higher chakras. That is what this sutra is about. And it then mentions Unmani Avashta, which I mentioned when we discussed the crown chakra. How can there be functioning of the crown chakra? How can there be spirit? How can there be attainment of the goal? The goal is functioning of the crown chakra, of course, awakening. Sutra 5, only when all the nadis, which are full of impurities, become purified, then only does the yogin become an expert in the control of energy. Nothing to add to that really. 6, so control of energy should be done daily with the mind in which the sattvika element prevails, till the Shushumna nadi is free from impurities. You know, we've read only 6 sutras about pranayama, and there have been so many hints already that this is not breath control. This is a mind control exercise. Control of energy should be done daily with the mind. Not with the lungs, not with the nose or the mouth, with the mind. In which the sattvika element prevails, which means that you are focused, that you are, sattvika is the condition of sattva. So you're calm, you're focused, concentration on controlling the mind, until the Sushumna nadi is free from impurities. Sutra 7 brings us to the first stage of pranayama. Before that, I want to add some more insights that show that pranayama is not breath control. When you are healthy and you practice pranayama, especially if you do it occasionally, you may not feel any difference at all. You may not feel any effect at all, other than the effect that you already have when you meditate, that it makes you calm and focused. So basically, when you're healthy, you're blessed. But it can also be a curse, because you don't feel much effect from your pranayama, so you can easily dismiss the value of it. Now, throughout the years, we've had some students who ended up with yoga to find healing. from chronic diseases. What is a chronic disease? That is a disease for which the medical science has no cure. Doctors have no cure. All they can do is oppress the symptoms. I will explain both cases. The first one happened when I had just opened my first studio in Itaewon in 2002, and a Korean girl visited me, and she introduced herself as a yoga teacher. I'm a yoga teacher, and I came across your website, and I want to learn from you. And it was in the summer, it was pretty hot. Summers in Korea are pretty hot. But she was wearing a turtleneck. So she then went on to explain that since birth, she's been having atopy. She's been suffering from atopy, rashes on the skin that become red, hence the turtleneck. She had huge rashes on her throat, arms, legs, upper body, all over. And become very itchy. So itchy that she would scratch them until they bleed. And so she explained that when she was born, she was missing one vertebra in her lower back, and the doctors think that that is the cause for her condition. Her energy circulation is not optimal because of that, and it leads to the skin disease that she is suffering from birth. So desperate, starting of course with her parents when she was a baby, desperate for a solution because she was crying all the time and hurting herself all the time. They tried everything. Of course, first you go to the general physician, who will then refer you to the hospital. Then you have a dermatologist, and all they could do was give some creams that would oppress the symptoms, the itch or the pain. But she would it just didn't get any better. And so they tried alternative medicine, even quackery. In their desperation, they tried everything. Now, when she was old enough, like in her late teens or so, she then read something about yoga, and she thought that she could find healing practicing yoga. That is why she became a yoga teacher. She became a yoga teacher by default because she practiced yoga very fanatically almost to find healing. So after several years of practicing yoga to find healing, which it didn't give, she became a yoga teacher by default. But the rashes didn't go away. She felt healthier, of course. She felt stronger because that's what yoga does with you. It conditions you. It makes you healthier and stronger. But the rashes remained. And when she found our website, she had an impression that we had something to offer that she hadn't found in yoga thus far. But kind of intuitively, she knew that yoga could offer her healing, but she just couldn't find it. She's been shopping around, trying everything, and she just couldn't find it. So after she had told me all that, I explained about pranayama. I assessed her condition as being a deep tamas condition. She was very lethargic, very kind of weakish. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but you feel that. You feel a person's condition. So, while other students had to wait until lesson 19 for the introduction of pranayama, like you have waited until today, I introduced it to her at lesson 1, one-on-one, because she was desperate to find a cure. And she started doing Nadi Sodhana pranayama twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. And it worked. It didn't cure her, but it reduced the rashes to almost zero. And one day she came to me and she said, Ron, my mom is so happy. She wants to express her gratitude to you because for the first time in my life, I was able to sleep throughout the night without pain, without crying, without disturbing the other family members. Huge relief there. The thing is, it's a chronic disease. When she slackens off, when she has moments or periods that she is not so diligent in her yoga practice, it comes back. Which is then the motivation to continue practicing and doing it on a regular basis, preferably on a daily basis. It really worked, and it changed her life. She then went to Mexico to teach meditation there and stayed there for a long time, and only 2 years ago she came back again. It's a completely not only changed her life, but also that of her family, parents and sibling. Which proved the value of pranayama. She had done pranayama as breathing, and it didn't change her rashes. Pranayama in the original way as energy control, it really changed her condition. But only as long as she practiced. The same story with the other student who came in 2009 or 2010 when I had the studios here in Yoido. A little bit older, in her early 30s, but suffering from severe spinal rheumatism. That's a chronic disease, especially when you have it so young. And in the same way as the Korean student with atopy, she has tried everything. From regular medicine to quackery to everything. And yoga. She also had been practicing yoga for several years, making her very flexible. And rheumatism is an affection to the bones, so it did help a little bit, enough to keep her motivated to continue practicing. But the answer of the doctors was giving her very heavy painkillers. And that's all that they could do for her. So she was a very busy mom. She had 3 young boys and a diplomat husband. So she was very busy, controlling school life of the 3 children and the busy life of the diplomat husband. And one day she said, Ron, I just so dread going to sleep. And I scratched my head and I said, why do you dread going to sleep? At least until you wake up, you can be without pain. Then she said, that's the whole point. I dread going to sleep because I know I have to wake up again and suffer so much. And so, like with the other student, I introduced her to Nadi Sodhana Pranayama before the other students learned it in lesson 19. And the transformation with her was just from night to day. When she came, she was very dark and very moody and very easily offended, combative. When you're suffering so much, that's just terrible to have to live like that. And she completely transformed. She became a joker, a clown. She started pranking me in the class in front of the other students, joking and fooling, and just amazing how she transformed. And she could stop taking the heavy painkillers. Life became bearable. But same story as with the other student. Whenever she's now in Norway. She lives in Norway with her kids. We sometimes communicate through Messenger. Sometimes she slackens off, like we all do, but in her case, the repercussions are really severe. That horrible pain, it's chronic, so it comes back. And it's like reinventing the wheel time and time again. When she starts practicing again and the pains go away, she just has to write me and say, "Oh my God, Ron, I'm so happy that I met you." And yeah, pranayama really works. And I started this explanation saying, when you're healthy, you're blessed. But it can also be a curse, because you can be very skeptical about what you're about to learn if you're very healthy, because you don't really feel that much of an impact. But those with chronic diseases have found that they can manage their disease. It's chronic, it will never completely heal. There is a reason why it's chronic, unless the cause is taken away, which we can't do with yoga. It's at least manageable, and it has given them a lot of joy and happiness in their life in return for the discipline they put in to practice on a regular basis. So these experiences, for me, having been their teacher and having seen their transformation, leaves no doubt that pranayama is the way that I learned it from Ajita, the way that he learned it from his mentors, and the way that we have taught it also throughout the decades that we're teaching yoga. Sutra 7. The yogin, assuming the Padmasana, should draw in the energy through the moon. And having retained it as long as possible, should then release it to the sun, through the sun. Now, I don't know how other yoga teachers do it, but how can you translate this into breath control? Knowing that the sun is at the bottom and the moon is at the top. Being the sun gate and the moon gate. The sutra says, seated in the Padmasana. It's suggesting that you should sit in the most difficult meditation pose that yoga has. You don't have to, especially if you're not able to. That is why we have Sukhasana. Sukha means easy. What is important is that if you have difficulty sitting in Padmasana, you sit in Padmasana. It will give so much discomfort and pain that you can't focus on your exercise anymore. So it doesn't make sense if you force yourself in that position just because the text tells you to. But it is true, if you're able to sit in Padmasana, it is a little bit more effective. After the introduction of pranayama, we will start reading chapter 1. One of the exercises introduced is Padmasana, the lotus pose. And when we come across that, I will explain how that works energy-wise. So, let's go back to the text. Draw in the energy through the moon. The moon is where? Above the head. You draw in Shiva energy. Having retained it, it says as long as possible. So having retained it, that is the sun, you release it through the sun. Now you can see where the Kriya exercises come into play. They have prepared you for this. Swallowing a piece of cloth, expelling water from the anus. Now, if you've read the handout, you see that there is a structure. This is called Nadi Sodhana. The structure is based on counting. You have inflow, counting to 12. Then you have a retention stage, counting to 48. Then you have outflow, counting to 24, and another retention, counting to 48. This ratio never changes. It's a ratio 1:4:2:4. This is another point about breath control. There are 9 pranayama exercises. Have you ever learned pranayama as breath control in a yoga studio? If you have, how many pranayamas did you learn? Maybe 1 or 2. Probably Bhastrika and maybe Ujjayi or Nadi Sodhana, where you do something like this. Right? So, if you follow the counting, this is basic counting. If you do this as breath control, you inhale counting to 12. That's possible, that's doable. Then you hold your breath counting to 48. After inhalation, you can hold your breath counting to 48 if you count in seconds. Then you need to exhale counting to 24. That is already becoming difficult, but still doable. But after completely emptying your lungs, exhaling, holding your breath again to counting to 48. Most people never make it. Impossible. Now this is basic count. The ultimate count, if you practice pranayama on a very regular basis, in a couple of years' time, you build it up to the ultimate count of 80, 320, 160, 320. Same ratio, 1:8:4:8. No, what did I say? 1:4:2:4. Same ratio. Totally impossible as breath control. Totally. And the reason why, if you learn pranayama as breath control in yoga studios, that you learn only 1 or 2 of the 9 pranayamas, is because the ones that you learn are to some extent doable. All the others are totally impossible, and so you don't learn them. What we learn here, you will see, in this course you will learn 5 pranayamas, 5 out of 9. The other 4 are taught in an advanced course if we do that in the future again. You will see that each of the pranayamas has a very distinct purpose. Nadi Sodhana is to create flow through, to accelerate the energy, to purify the energy channels. That is what Nadi Sodhana means. Nadi is the energy channels, Sodhana means purification. So you do this before you are introduced to the other pranayamas that each deal with particular categories of defaults, diseases or problems that we could possibly have physically and also mentally. Now the counting is not on seconds, based on seconds, but more like when you count in English, when you count like 1001, 1002, 1003. 1004. So you count slowly, gradually, so that it has more time to have an effect on you. So altogether, in the basic count, one cycle would take about 4 minutes. 3-4 minutes. Because it is yoga, I have learned to count with Om. I always count with Om, and I teach my students to count with Om. So Om 1, Om 2, Om 3. And you do that each in your own language. I count in Dutch. If you're Korean, you count in Korean. If you're French, you count in French, etc. So, I forgot to draw the moon. That's not so important, but the red ball and a blue ball. So I have a moon gate and a sun gate. So, let's just do this. Kriya is done, we don't repeat them. The retention stage, I have to explain the retention stage. In the second session, we go to 8, 9, and 10. That is where you learn the full exercise of Nadi Sodhana Pranayama. This is an introduction. In the handout, the retention is explained, and the bandhas are explained in the handout. There is Jalandhara Bandha, which is a throat lock, which is the easiest one, because that is just physical. You stretch up your neck, you tuck in your chin, and that is basically Jalandhara Bandha, the throat lock. You do that during the retention stage, counting to 48. The root lock is subtle. If you have done Ujjayi, if you have done Ashtanga Yoga, you may have learned Mula Bandha, which is the root lock. And they tell you to repetitively squeeze the buttock muscles, the pelvic bottom muscles. But that is gross. That is a gross physical action. The bandhas are not gross physical actions. They are subtle. We're dealing with energy here, not with muscles. Maybe you have noticed already that when you meditate, that you become straighter and straighter in a natural way. Effortless, you sit more and more straight. And your neck extends and your chin tucks in a little bit. The same happens with your pelvic bottom. Instead of squeezing your muscles, if you pay attention, when you sit straight like this, your pelvis is tilting, your upper body muscles, especially around the waist, are engaged, the neck stretches up, and the pelvic bottom muscles are engaged naturally. That is the root lock. So, during the retention stage, in the beginning you have so many things to look at. It's like a dashboard with all the switches and things that you need to control. Pranayama is in the beginning a little bit overwhelming because of all the details, the aspects. But it's something, maybe you read the handout, I compared it to driving a car. Everybody remembers the first time, all of you have driven a car? Remember the first time when you drove a car? If you have your first lesson with an instructor in the legal way, the instructor will take you to an abandoned parking lot where there are no trees and lampposts and parked cars, and will let you drive a little bit there without you being able to do any damage, to bump into any obstacle. Why? Because it's very overwhelming. There are 3 pedals on the floor. There is the steering wheel, the mirrors, the indicator, and the window wipers, and the light switch. And in the beginning, that's very overwhelming. And while you are driving, actually, already having difficulty with these pedals and the switch, the gear shift, and you have to keep your eyes on the road. Pranayama is a little bit like that. The first time that you learn to drive, you think you're never going to be able to control all that. That is because in the beginning you approach it mentally. If you continue to drive, an experienced driver doesn't drive mentally. When you are experienced, you drive intuitively. And you don't even notice anymore when you push the clutch, the brake, or the accelerator. You don't even notice anymore that you're checking your left side mirror, your inside mirror. Everything happens. You become one with the car. It becomes intuitive. You don't have to think anymore. That is with pranayama, the same thing will happen. In the beginning, a little bit overwhelming. Just play a little bit, like the instructor allowed you to play in the abandoned parking lot. Play a little bit with the concept, and you become familiar with it, and it becomes something that you have under control. Like you can control all the switches and pedals and mirrors, and at the same time looking at the road while you drive a car. All right, so let's give this a try. 25 minutes. It will take about 4 minutes. Do not pay too much attention to time. But when you're done with the pranayama, do not repeat the cycle. You just do the cycle only once, and the remainder of the time you concentrate on nada.